So I want to take this opportunity to welcome PS, Professor Edward Kisiangani, PS State Department for Broadcasting and Communication, to kindly come over and make his remarks. Sorry for that interruption.
Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. When the PCS has spoken, you really don't expect me to address this meeting again, and especially also when my colleague, Dr. Singoe, has also spoken. So I'll just make a few comments and then make sure the rest of the protocol operates. I think the most important thing that makes us gather here is about the role of the media in shaping up our foreign policy. And there are quite a lot of highlights, and I'm sure PCS and the PS have already talked about them. But very cardinal and important in this case is the fact that foreign policy after Westphalia has also changed a lot. And there are so many dynamics involved in the crafting of foreign policy, especially from the 20th century going into the 21st century. Foreign policy now is being shaped by a lot of non-state actors. And these non-state actors are people who do things. They do not have to pay allegiance to any government. They could be business people. They could also be sports people, very, very influential people in society who transact a lot of business between themselves and the people of other nationalities without any reference to government. These people are very influential. They have money, they have resources, they also have knowledge and skills. And if you ignore them, they are likely to cause you problems as government. We know very well that the state, as crafted in the modern era, does not have capacity to provide all the services that people need. And that's why the state also needs private citizens, private people to support it. So the people who come in as private enterprises do not have to beg government, but they come in with some agenda. And so when you are crafting foreign policy, you have also to think about the role these people will play. One group that is very, very influential in this is the media. The media play a big role. We have private media, we have government media, but across the world, private media is increasingly gaining influence in the crafting of foreign policy. So that's why in our country, we recognize the role of the media, not from the government perspective, but the general perspective that we need media to also help us. Help us, just like other countries also need media to help to pursue and even support government policy with regard to the crafting of foreign policy. This is very critical. So in our case here, the role of the media cannot be overemphasized. Media is critical. We need the media to talk about our bottom-up thinking. The foreign policy of Kenya has recently shifted a great deal towards economic diplomacy. And we're doing economic diplomacy deliberately because the government agenda is based on that. We want to do something about housing, and housing is affordable housing, which is within the realm of housing and settlement. We want to do something about MSMEs. We want to do something about universal health care. We want to do something about agriculture and food security, information superhighway. As we do this, we need media to provide proper critical coverage, not just negative coverage that sometimes we witness, but coverage which helps the government advertise its agenda so that the public can understand what government is doing about us. So even in foreign missions, the foreign missions we have across the world, we're expecting that they also adopt this policy of economic diplomacy, where, as you know, President Ruto has spoken about this many, many times. And he spoke about the fact that we have been primary producers of commodities, for example. We produce commodities, but we do not do very much of value addition. So what is his chain, supply chain? What is his movement? You begin with the raw goods that we produce around here. Then we do value addition. When we do value addition, we look for markets for the goods that we produce. They fetch more money. What is the role of the missions abroad? The missions abroad is to look for these markets. What is the role of the media? The media is to highlight the markets that are available for the goods and even services we are about to produce or to provide. So therefore, media must be a partner of government in pursuing the correct foreign policy that the government has defined. Media must be at the center to advocate for the furtherance of this bottom-up economic thinking, which is critical for the transformation of our country. So, ladies and gentlemen, therefore, this gathering that we have here is just in support of what government is going to do, and also in recognition of the role of the media in promoting our economic diplomacy, which is critical. Now, the last thing that I want to talk about, which is very quickly in a minute, is the fact that in terms of crafting, therefore, policy, we must also think about our national interest. Because sometimes you get people on the streets, and especially people within the media, and you ask them about Kenya's national interests, and they struggle. I think PCS, we need another seminar like this one, a short one, a breakfast meeting, where we take people through what national interests are. Cabinet knows about national interests, the executive knows about national interests, but I think the media also needs to appreciate what national interests of Kenya are. There is no place across the world where you find that the media can be armed against its own, especially like here in our own country. You won't find it anywhere in the world. Some of the things that you witness around here, where a member of the media can arm themselves against the national interests of their own country. Even if you go to China, you go to the UK, national interest take precedence. So it is important for the media here, across the country, to recognize that when you do things that violate national interests, you don't hurt individuals, you hurt the country. So therefore, there are things related to security. There are things related to our own national values, which the media must highlight positively, because when you talk against them, you also threaten our economic agenda. So this is very critical, and understanding national interests is not a leisure thing that we are undertaking. It is a critical obligation for every media practitioner. You are not practicing your trade in a vacuum. You are practicing your trade in a context that promotes the interests of our people. But when you do it to promote the interests of other people, visitors who have come here, you have lost your identity as Kenyan people. You have lost your identity as African people. We have an agenda. You realize that even when we go to international organizations and we get into the UN forums, Africa has a different agenda. There are certain universal values that put us together as the UN family, but Africa has certain things that are unique to Africa, so we defend them. When we go there and our president goes there like he has done, he is going to defend Kenyan interests, because there is no need for us to appear in international forum when we cannot defend our own national interests. So these things related to security, related to our value systems, related to our economic pillars, these things must be internalized by everybody within the media. So with those few remarks, PCS, I shouldn't be in this position to speak after you have spoken, but I would like to appreciate your presence, and I'm sure the guidance you are giving to the ministry and the support you are giving to our president is going to go a long way in making us be become good partners in this development agenda, especially as far as government and the media is concerned. We are working together, and we are going to bank on your leadership to make sure that we promote this relationship to levels that are healthy enough to protect our national interests. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you, PS, for those remarks. The PCS has requested that he also wants to hear a little bit from the media in terms of reacting to what he presented before he leaves. So I want to invite Mr. Macharia Gaitho to just come over and say a few remarks. So we're a little bit reorganizing the program, but we're going to go back to our program after this. Mr. Macharia.
Buenos días. The PSs and everybody else, I'm very happy to be here. I think this is the first time we've had such an engagement with this ministry in my memory, so it is very welcome. I think I have listened closely to what you have said, and I think obviously there are many issues worth discussing, particularly on the role of the media in our foreign policy, in government, and even in all issues around government policy. We've heard about economic diplomacy, our issues on how we react, whether it is our people in Lebanon. We've had some very robust foreign policy interventions on issues like Ukraine and Palestine, which in many ways have disabused us of the notion that we grew up knowing that Kenya's foreign policy is what we used to call wait and see foreign policy. I think we have moved away from that, but sometimes we see a bit of uncertainties on where we stand. And sometimes we ask, do we even have a foreign policy, or it depends on who is in office, or what is the issue of the day? And we see a lot of knee-jerk reactions sometimes. What interested me is when you talked about, for instance, economic diplomacy. Whenever I travel outside the country, I make a point of visiting our ambassador or high commissioner. And sometimes I've sat in on meetings where the ambassador is hosting visitors, delegations from the host country. And there is always this ritual talk about our quality tea and our quality coffee and how you should buy more of that. And then somebody comes with a very beautiful looking container full of Earl Grey tea, Sri Lanka tea, Ceylon tea, Nescafe instant coffee, and oh dear, why can't we get somebody in the embassy to brew a good cup of Kenyan tea and Kenyan coffee, the one you are promoting, instead of serving Earl Grey tea? I see the same things when I visit our ministers here, and they happen to have a foreign delegation, and they're very proud to serve Earl Grey tea. And I always think England does not grow a single tea bush or coffee, and yet we're happy to serve them those packaged things instead of serving what we have and what we can do best. You know, simple things like those really do matter, and they do make an impression. And please, talk to your ambassadors all over the world. Your colleagues in the cabinet serve good brewed Kenyan tea and Kenyan coffee. As simple as that. These are the small things that really matter. The other issue is for this ministry and for all other ministries is government communications. I think this government has got more communications people than all previous governments combined. We in the media often do not know who to turn to because there are so many people in charge of communications everywhere. We don't know who has which job description, who reports to who is in charge of what. There is a very, very big disconnect there. And I think those are things which need to be really streamlined and some clarity offered. And then, of course, there is this whole thing of government seeing, almost by reflex, seeing media as an enemy, as some foe. We are not enemies of government. To the contrary, we would want to support the government. And when we talk about the government, it is not about the party that temporarily happens to be in power. It is about Kenya. It is about Kenya, and it is important to understand that Kenya is bigger than the president in power, or the government in power, or the party in power. Those come and go, but Kenya remains. And for us in the media, I think that is what is more important. We have heard about the national interest. We stand for the national interest. But the national interest is not necessarily the interest of the party or the government in power. It is beyond that. Far, far, far beyond that. As I said, parties, governments, presidents, ministers come and go. The national interest, in our view, remains constant. And that is how we engage. This is a very welcome meeting. I remember when Kenya was going to marching into Somalia, we were called for a meeting, a closed-door meeting, with the Ministry of Defense, the top KDF command, and we had a good briefing. What is it you're going to do there? What do you want to achieve? What is the objective? What is your exit plan? You know, we discussed all those things, and we came out with a very good understanding, and that played a big role in shaping our reporting on the Somalia engagement. And there is no reason why we cannot do that with all government initiatives or projects, whether it is commercial deals, infrastructure deals, all those kind of things. If there can be some openness, some explanations, some discussions in advance, then that will play a big role in answering questions before they are asked in the media, before there is so much misunderstanding, before there is so much what you might want to call propaganda or disinformation. It is about anticipating the questions in advance and answering them in advance. As simple as that. We will not say much more. We will have a conversation here later on. But thank you very much for this engagement. And from the media, just one plea, Mr. CS. I know you are aware of this situation involving one of our own, Dorothy Kweyo, whose son is facing a death sentence in somewhere out there. I know you have engaged her, you've engaged the family, and there is some what you call blood money to be paid. As the media and as friends, we have been doing as much as we can to raise what we can, but it falls far short of what is being demanded. I don't know whether you still have a confidential budget. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Gaito. Let's clap for him again, once again. Yeah, no, so with that, and I believe some of the issues we've raised, they'll be addressed in the presentation which Ambassador Lucy is going to be making. But before I invite Lucy back, I want to invite the PS to come over and perhaps give some responses to some of the issues which have been raised by Mr. Gaito.
I'm really sorry for messing up the program a bit, but given the weighty matters that Macharia Gaito has raised, I think it behooves us to probably just respond briefly. We hear you, Macharia, and I think your perspective is really accurate. I think the disconnect of presenting Kenyan coffee or Kenyan tea as the best tea and coffee, and yet you don't serve it to your visitors is such a stark one. It's really because it's in the action, it's in the doing that you're able to demonstrate fidelity to what you say, right? And so we take that. But that's part of the conversation we've been having around the need to resource our missions sufficiently. The reason why our great tea is being, kind of offered to guests in, say, our mission in Geneva is because they can get it at the supermarket right there. To ship Kenyan tea from here for an occasion such as the one you described might cost quite a lot. And sometimes the budget doesn't exist. And that's why we need to have a conversation, around how do we resource our missions? If they are in fact a very critical cog in telling our story and expanding access to markets, how should we position them? And that's part of the work that is going on in terms of policy. The second issue which I think you raised is the issue of national interest. And I think it's also something that the policy seeks to address. The policy, for a long time, I think it's been thought, and I think PCS has mentioned this, that foreign policy is a business of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. It's not. Foreign Affairs has a primary responsibility of driving the foreign policy. But as a matter of fact, foreign policy of the Republic of Kenya is not only owned by government writ large, but it's owned by society, including the non-state actors that my brother, Dr. Kisiangani, alluded to. So foreign policy goes way beyond, number one, it goes beyond the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. It cuts across all governments, but it also implicates society. And that it is for that reason that PCS, in his wisdom, has said that we will move beyond foreign policy. We will take this conversation to Parliament and have Parliament adopt a sessional paper. because in the process of adopting the sessional paper, there will be broader conversation that involves the entire, the entire citizenry. The last point I wish to make, even though there are many other things to discuss, is the plea that you have made with regard to the plight of the son of Dorothy Kweyu. It's a matter we are very, very much seized with, both at the PCS level and at my level. We are all hands on deck on this matter. Because of our intervention, you remember the execution was meant to have happened 3 months ago in July. That process has since been adjourned indefinitely, actually, to allow for us to be able to raise requisite resources. Our mission in Riyadh is working round the clock in terms of mobilizing resources. We are also working round the clock to mobilize resources. We are deploying diplomatic or other diplomatic tools which involve discussions with the government of Saudi Arabia. That has already happened, I think, when PCS has met his counterpart in Saudi Arabia. He's made that plea directly. There are conversations taking place between the Saudi embassy here and our embassy in Riyadh. And so we want to give you the assurance that that process, we hope very much, will lead to the release of this, of our brother. I know that even at the level of the president, there is a process that is going on where the president is writing to his counterpart in Saudi, again to make the same plea. I want to leave it at that, but again to indicate to all of us our readiness and our willingness to engage. We have a country to build, and it's a country that is not contingent on the current presidency. It's a country that will exist in perpetuity long after we're gone. And so we have a responsibility to do our part in this present generation. And I really want to thank the candor and the openness that I hear, around this discussion. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you, PS. So we go now to the next part of the program, but before that, I want to recognize our the Chief Executive Officer, Lilian Kemuto, who is with us here representing Kenya Yearbook Editorial Board. Why I'm recognizing her is because we on 29 November to 8th December, we'll be celebrating 60 years of our diplomatic journey, and we are working with them to produce a yearbook, and they are here also to document part of this engagement. So with that, I want to invite Ambassador Lucy to come over, please, and make a presentation.
Thank you again, Ms. Ambassador Masila. I will continue from where I stopped. I think after my superiors have spoken, my presentation is half covered. And so I will skim through what I have and probably just focus on the main area, which is our new revised foreign policy. Policy. If we were to talk about it, it can probably take us even up to a week. So I'll just skim through. And as a way of background, just to remind ourselves that the Ministry of Foreign Affairs was established in 1963, but just as a Department of External Affairs. And in 1969, that's when it became fully fledged. And today we have it expanded, and we have two key departments, the Department of Foreign Affairs and Department of Diaspora Affairs. We have about 68 missions abroad that the State Department of Foreign Affairs oversees, and we also serve about 109 foreign resident missions here and about 148 intergovernmental and international organizations. That is basically how our diplomatic footprint looks like. In Africa, we have 29 missions. That includes fully fledged consulates and liaison offices. In Americas, we have about 6. Asia, we have about 9. And in the Middle East, we have about 9. The mandate of the State Department, or let me say the ministry at large, is anchored on Chapter 9 of the Constitution, the Foreign Service Act, and also on Executive Order number 2 of 2023. And our broad mandate is fundamentally to manage Kenya's foreign policy. That's our vision, a prosperous, a peaceful, prosperous, and globally competitive Kenya. And our mission is to project, promote, and protect Kenya's interests and image globally through innovative diplomacy and contribute towards a just, peaceful, and equitable world. I always say that if you do not remember anything else about foreign affairs, just remember the 3 Ps: protect, promote, and project. Those 3 are critical. So what is foreign policy? Again, without going much into it, just to remind ourselves that foreign policy is a mechanism of national governments to guide their diplomatic interactions and relationships with other countries. And usually this speaks to the national agenda and development prints of the country. You may wish to recall, I know this is not new, about the Montevideo Convention of 1963 that provides the definition of nationhood. And this is the one that gave capacity to states to engage in international relations. We are also aware, I believe, about the Vienna Convention on Diplomatic Relations of 1961, which defines diplomatic engagements, privileges, and immunities that contribute to the development of friendly relations among nations. So, and then we quickly see what is Kenya's foreign policy that we're talking about today. And Kenya's foreign policy is guided by a strong belief that our own future is inextricably tied to the stability and security of our republic and common heritage. That is important to remember. And it is also linked to that stability and prosperity of our neighbors in the East African region, sub-region, and also in the continent. And coupled with this dedication to peace, security, regionalism, Pan-Africanism, economic and social dynamics, multilateralism, these are the basis of Kenya's foreign policy doctrine that the PS talked earlier about. Basically, what is Kenya known for? These are key principles that shape our global engagement. And throughout independent Kenya, since 1963, Kenya has successfully forged mutually beneficial alliances, both with the West and the East, the issue of non-aligned foreign policy. The PS also talked about the policy that we are reviewing. This was, for the first time in 2014, the Kenya foreign policy document was written and published. And this policy had 5 interlinked pillars: peace diplomacy, economic diplomacy, environmental diplomacy, diaspora diplomacy, and cultural diplomacy. This is the policy that we are reviewing. We are in the process of reviewing because since 2014, a lot of water has gone under the bridge, and there are many global shifts that are being witnessed and continue to shape the foreign policy world over. We know that the world is ever changing, and so we have to move in tandem. So, for example, in 2014, there are certain areas that we did not cover in that document, and we've seen a lot of changes happening. We have emerging areas in diplomacy, like today parliamentary diplomacy has become key, digital diplomacy, global health diplomacy, maritime and blue economy diplomacy, conference diplomacy, as well as public diplomacy. These are areas that we didn't mention at all in the 2014 foreign policy. So there's that continuous need to evaluate and adapt our foreign policy to make it fit for purpose and trend with what is happening globally. For that reason, in 2014, our leadership, the PCS and the PS, deemed it fit, and they constituted a committee, which I'm humbled to chair, and representing 13 MDAs to review the foreign policy. And the committee developed a comprehensive roadmap to guide this process. We also engage with relevant stakeholders so as to get views and insights of the policy. The process, we can say that it really kick-started on 30th July 2014 when we held a colloquium with a diverse representation of stakeholders. We had academia, we had researchers, we had practitioners, we had the youth, and we also had representation from relevant government officials. So this is the consultations that we are expected to have with stakeholders. We have what you see in green is what we have already covered. We have engaged our ambassadors, high commissioners, and heads of departments, some of who are here. We've also engaged our stakeholders in the health sector, in maritime and blue economy, peace and security, academia, and today we are engaging with you. We have the others that we are engaging from civil society, private sector, council of governors, youth and students. Those we are engaging in the next 2 weeks, and we will be left with Parliament, Public Service Commission, Salaries, Remuneration Commission, the general public as well, and PCS has also mentioned this morning that we need to engage the faith-based organizations. That's something that we also need to factor in. In addition, we are going to have other critical consultative forums. We are going to have the mega retreat, which is scheduled someplace 20th to 22nd of November, if it's confirmed, where His Excellency, where we will be engaging with His Excellency the President. We will also have a mega launch of the foreign policy together with the celebration of 60 years of our diplomacy. As I said, there are new areas that we have brought on board in this revised or proposed new foreign policy. In addition to the 5 peace and security diplomacy, economic and commercial diplomacy, we have also included science, technology, and innovation. We have also expanded the environmental pillar to be environmental and climate change focus area. We have the diaspora policy, diplomacy. We have socio-cultural diplomacy that we have also expanded quite much. And we also have a new area on global governance and multilateral diplomacy. Notice that we are no longer talking about pillars, but focus areas, because they will keep changing as we go along. Pillars like this one here is supposed to be permanent, not easily moved, and we want, like PCS said, we want to be agile in our foreign policy. So looking at these different focus areas, the 7 of them, you will realize that these areas are all interlinked and mutually inclusive. That is why you see that diagram there. And when we recognize the interdependence of these different areas, you realize that we will be focusing ultimately to the global sustainability, which is for the common good. In the middle, and PS Kisiangani talked about it, we have the national interest. This is basically the soul of our foreign policy. Then we have bilateralism and multilateralism on the side. These are actually the means by which we are going to be achieving this foreign policy. The different focus areas that I mentioned are seen as the food that feeds into the soul of the foreign policy. Then below there, we have the whole of government approach. This is adopted to ensure the interoperability in the implementation of the foreign policy. And you will all agree with me that where the domestic policy stops, then the foreign policy begins. So just a little bit more on the different focus areas. I quickly run through it. The first one is peace and security, and the objective of this particular one is to safeguard Kenya's sovereignty and territorial integrity, preserving democracy and fundamental human rights, and ensuring the prosperity and well-being of the people of Kenya. On this, we are going to leverage mainly on the previous achievements. For example, the 3 terms of non-permanent membership that we have served in the UN Security Council. What achievements did we make, and how can we move that forward? What role did we play at the AU Peace and Security Council? We have participated in peacekeeping missions. We are reminded that we have already done over 43 of them, regionally and internationally. How do we leverage on all these? What about the role that we have played, especially regionally, in conflict resolution, peace-building efforts, and also in mediation? We have Sudan, Somalia, somebody mentioned, Ethiopia, DRC, Congo, and all that. We need to leverage on those achievements that we have made to push forward our foreign policy or our national interests. On the economic and commercial diplomacy focus area, this seeks to achieve robust economic and commercial engagement to secure Kenya's socio-economic development and prosperity with a broad aim of becoming a middle income and industrialized economy. Our economic and commercial diplomacy focus area will also prioritize the intra-Africa trade as well as regional economic integration. We are talking about the EAC, we are talking about the tripartite agreement, we're talking about the AFCFTA and all that. But at the same time, we'll be seeking to strengthen trade and commercial engagements globally. We will be considering the following areas: trade and investment, sustainable maritime and blue economy, tourism, creative economy, as well as transforming our missions to economic hubs. On science, technology, and innovation, this aims to integrate various forms of science, technology, and innovation to build a robust ecosystem to achieve Kenya's national interests and position the country as a key player in global technological discourse. And here again, we are seeking to leverage on Kenya's advancement in technology, especially in mobile technology, fintech, and other areas. It also aims to promote partnerships, because we can't do it alone, to support cutting-edge technologies, including artificial intelligence, to create jobs for economic growth and improve the welfare and living standards of Kenyans, and hence clearly supporting the BITA. We'll also be seeking to leverage on Kenya's standing in terms of how we see ourselves as the Silicon Savannah of Africa. On environmental and climate change focus area, we seek to promote global environmental sustainability through the preservation of natural resources, effective international collaborations, robust policy frameworks, and innovative strategies that support climate adaptation, biodiversity protection, and sustainable development. And here we seek to leverage on the presence of UNEP and UN Habitat here in Nairobi. We seek also to showcase our credentials as a global leader on environmental and climate change issues, as well as renewable energy being at 93-94%, which is really unmatched globally. On diaspora diplomacy, we will seek to harness the role and contribution of the diaspora to the national development. And we will also seek to leverage on the diaspora in promoting Kenya's interests abroad, including employment of Kenyans in strategic positions in both regional and international organizations. On sociocultural diplomacy, we will be seeking to harness sociocultural opportunities in the international arena, especially through the promotion of social values, cultural heritage, and endowments as tools to build relationships, foster understanding, and influence other nations. And here we'll be seeking, we will rather be focusing on cultural heritage, sports, arts, education, and global health diplomacy. And I think lastly, we'll be looking at the other focus area is global governance and multilateral diplomacy, where we'll be seeking to provide proactive leadership in global governance by promoting equitable representation, multilateralism, and strategic collaboration to address emerging challenges and safeguard national interests. When we did our colloquium, we were reminded that we must have a foreign policy that is bold. And so in this global governance and multilateral focus area, we will really be seeking to show or to demonstrate that boldness. As a country, we also continue to advocate for a more representative, fairer, and equitable international system that incorporates, reflects, and amplifies the voice of the global South. We'll also be seeking global reform of global architecture, financial, economic, and wider development for the global common good. In conclusion, the ministry will be seeking to enhance partnership with the fourth estate, and it was very well articulated by the PCS and the PSs, so that we can jointly advance Kenya's foreign policy based on the country's national interest. So therefore, the input, comments, insights that you give to us today will be considered as we review the policy document, and also as we implement the foreign policy. And it was clearly again said here that we will be having a sessional paper that will incorporate the means, the how of implementing the foreign policy. We are very optimistic that in December we will be able to launch this document under the able leadership of His Excellency the President. So, as a way forward, just as a reminder, it is we are seeking to get a way of partnering with you as members of the fourth estate in the finalization and implementation of the foreign policy for the common good of Kenya. And as I said, that's just a synopsis of the foreign policy document. As we finalize it, it will be a public document, and I believe we'll be sharing with you at a much later date. I thank you all for listening.
Thank you very much, Ambassador Lucy, for that presentation. That's just a sneak preview of what we have in the document. And now that brings us to the morning segment, which was to include the official opening by His Excellency the Prime Cabinet Secretary, as well as that presentation. And now we're going to the next part of the program, which is now going to be the crack of the matter, just to listen to the ideas which are going to help us enrich this document. And with that, I want to invite Mr. Macharia Gaitho to come over and preside over the next part of the program. So as Macharia Gaitho comes over, I want, I think, so thank you so much, Prime Cabinet Secretary. We really appreciate your time and everything, and we can now get seated and listen to the next.